coming from a middle-class family, the focus is mostly that boss just get good marks. If you don't get good marks, then none of these art and craft really matter much. So growing up that way, I wasn't very confident pursuing some of these things which the world thought that I could do. I never realized that I had this interest in the first place. That's the first thing. Second is, even if I would have realized, I didn't know how to make it a realization, as in to really pursue it ahead.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host Pritish Sanyal and you're listening to the 1% Project. Conversations that will help you understand how some of the smartest minds build, scale and operate new ideas and ventures. If you enjoy these conversations, do share and subscribe. Hello, this is Pritish Sanyal and this is the 1% Project podcast. I'm kicking off a series on building careers. Guests on this series will be talking about their career journey and how they have built it. My first guest on the career series is Abhay Maheshwari. I met Abhay through the Spotify India and Ideabrew studio LevelUp program for podcasters. I was fascinated by Abhay's story. He took to storytelling, open mics, and podcasting only after completing his engineering degree and landing a full-time job. Despite being encouraged and nudged to participate in drama, skits, and cultural activities, he hesitated to deviate from the traditional path in school and college. Listen in to learn how Abhay became an award-winning storyteller, nationally featured writer, and a TEDx speaker. If you have any feedback about this conversation, speaker, or topic recommendations, you can drop me a line at pritish@1%.live. Subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to it, and sign up to the 1% Project's Think newsletter at 1%.live, which brings highly curated content that adds value to your professional and personal development. We kick this conversation off by asking Abhay how he got into storytelling.
Oh boy, that is quite a mouthful to share. So the journey definitely did not start this way. People who know me pre-2014, 2015 know that I would shudder with fear when I would walk on the stage. And they wouldn't even imagine Abhay being on the stage or Abhay talking in front of the audience. Those adjectives wouldn't be put together in any form. But, as life progresses, I moved to a different city for a job. And then I started realizing that, here are some opportunities around you to really be more expressive. So the thing is that I never had an issue with being shy about it. I think I just didn't know how to do it. I didn't know the structure. Like I had a lot of thoughts in my mind, but I didn't know how to really put them forth. Like, how do I structure? What do I talk? What is my voice modulation? So I thought that, okay, this is a skill. You can learn it. It cannot be rocket science. Only rocket science is rocket science. So I gradually built it working through the Toastmasters program, which was thankfully there in my own office setting at that time. And on the way realizing that I have this tendency to exaggerate gossips or try to exaggerate instances, and which is then, of course, appreciated as a storytelling form in its own. And life took a turn. I started doing open mics over there. And at every moment, actually, I just started really enjoying this. And enjoying, I think, is a very poor choice of word. I think it started enriching me as an individual, because whenever I would go on the stage, be more expressive, I had to script out that entire story. And that meant like confronting my own emotions at a lot of places. And I didn't realize, but it was becoming therapeutic. I was simultaneously learning and knowing a lot about myself. So the journey became very enriching. It was not just about enjoyment, but enriching. And even if there is no audience, I mean, it's not like that every single time I was applauded for what story I presented. There were bummers as well. But it was about my journey and me taking a step outside the set norms of what one should have done at that point. So it is expected that you'll just go and to do your job, come back Saturday, Sunday and sleep, rest, and then Monday to Friday once again. But here I had something on Saturday and Sunday. So I would run across Mumbai, Pune, and for 5-minute slots, chose a struggle by choice, and I really enjoyed it. That is the bit of the journey. And every single moment there was a choice. The choice was to go back to whatever everybody is doing, and you or I was also doing before all this struggle, so-called struggle, is what I did. But then I kept asking that, okay, I mean, life is giving you something. Enjoy. And you can always go back to the set route anytime. There's no harm in it. So the journey is about those choices. The journey is about exploring new support systems, finding support in people who you never thought would be that ecosystem, and really realizing what is important in life. Really, really realizing what is important in life. Yes, I think that's the journey I'd summarize.
So when did the journey start?
Oh, I was never a writer growing up. I was always like interested in art and let's say dramatics. And my teachers would always say that you have very expressive eyes or you have a very strong voice. But there was a lot of belittlement in me, like growing up, because coming from a middle class family, the focus is mostly that boss just get good marks. Okay. And if you don't get good marks, then none of these art and craft really matter much. So growing up that way, I wasn't very confident pursuing some of these things which the world thought that I could do. So I never realized that I had this interest in the first place. That's the first thing. Second is, even if I would have realized, I didn't know how to make it a realization, as in to really pursue it ahead. For instance, in college, I was standing in the line in the dramatics club. I said, okay, no, I'm now 20, I'm now 18 and 19. I can make my own decisions. I should go and do what I want. But then also I got selected in the script writing team. And I said, okay, no, you know what? Like, this is all a distraction. All I want is a job out of this college. Even when opportunity struck and I was always there, I did not make that choice, made that leap. And I think that is the transformation which happened in the last 6-7 years, where I confronted those fears and really understood where though that kind of a decision making, which was very detrimental to me in many aspects, or up until growing up till 2014, detrimental to me in many forms, was coming from. So once I understood that piece, I think then I was able to take a better action on, okay, what is the conscious choice I need to make, and what is how to take calculated risk. So things started falling in place probably post 2015, I would say, when I moved to Pune, moved to a little better environment in terms of the job that I had, in terms of the folks I had around me. That led to a lot of circumstances, and then I made those conscious choices to move ahead. But I was never that writer who would scribble on the back of the notebooks and all. I would just make drawings and random things.
Fascinating. Let's talk about your podcast, Laal Chasma, which was picked up by Spotify LevelUp program. What is it about and where has it got you?
So Laal Chasma, like I said, is my podcast. It's, I think, more of a creative outlet. I look at it that way, where definitely the stories are, I would say, inspired by my true events, by my life's true events, but sprinkled with fiction to make it more relatable and consumable for everybody. I know that if I start talking about me and my dad in very direct terms, my dad wouldn't just completely break the relation. So I have to sprinkling that fiction here and there. And Laal Chashma opened a lot of doors in the sense that I didn't know that, okay, so this journey got me closer to the fact that I have a skill probably which I should explore for my own contentment and enrichment. But Laal Chashma as a podcast, when it went to people, it told me a completely different picture. I had never imagined that I would resonate with thousands and thousands of people across the globe. Strangers then messaging me and saying that something made them cry or my story really moved them from within. That was very touching because, like I said, that I grew up very underconfident and belittled. So for somebody to realize this, that you scripted something from your own life, added a little bit of fiction, that means is a 90-10 ratio and people are able to resonate with that. It was very powerful, very moving for me. And the biggest thing it led me to was closer and closer to answering life's most important questions. That is being like, what is true contentment mean? And is the true contentment that I find by writing it for myself, or is it for my audience? Because slowly and slowly, it started as a hobby. Slowly and slowly, it became more, the term creator was being thrown around just like a buzzword. And I was like, wait a minute, I can't just create randomly every single week throwing out a story, because I have to definitely keep the sentiments of my audience in mind, but I have to keep realizing that this was my creative outlet. So I chose it to be the way it is. I did not want this to be a med school where, or like how Hassan Minaj talks about in one of the interviews, he calls it the YouTube med school because all the YouTubers are now doing 9 to 5 job only. So it started off as a creative outlet to be different from the job market, but they are now kind of tied to the YouTube or the creator economy algorithms. So it led me closer to what is really important in life, taking some tough calls. I've got opportunities where 10 years ago or anybody else would have immediately jumped on, in the sense that very big media houses in the country wanted to acquire my podcast. And I chose not to go with that. And not because of ego, but I realized that this is for me. This is first for me, and then probably, it goes out to the world. So taking those tough choices also is something that it groomed me, that, okay, probably 5 years ago, I would have jumped on that like without thinking. But then I thought about it and I was like, okay, take your time. You have to do it for yourself and build something for yourself. You have to make sure you only have one job, which is being a management consultant, and not a second job of being a creator. So I tried to do that. So it taught me a lot about life. I think those are the more non-tangible places where it took me. Of course, the more tangible and tactable places is meeting fellow creators and thinkers like yourself from across the country, which, in any job limits you to the circle where the job revolves around. But through podcasting, I've met people like you from various corporate backgrounds, education backgrounds, interest backgrounds. That again eventually contributed to shaping my perspective, because now when I get out, I'm not immediately fascinated by a BMW and I say, oh, I want one. I used to be like that 10 years ago, but now I'm like, wait a minute. The pleasure comes from that nostalgia from my dad's Honda Civic, not from the shiny Mercedes of my boss. So I think everything put together I'm thankful and touched wood, it took me to a very good place in life for that way.
Recently, you did a TEDx talk on slowing life in stories. Can you double click on it?
So TEDx is all about sharing an idea, like ideas worth sharing. And I started thinking when I saw the application form and I said, what idea do I really have? It took me back like to my childhood days where I really connected that audio was something that I was always fascinated with. It's just that today digital audio has come up, or maybe because of work, my consumption of FM radio has gone down. But as a kid, I enjoy audio and how audio really helped me growing up, make peace and make friends with my own self in different forms, because there were bits of loneliness and moments of loneliness where the radio truly helped me. When I had to write a script, an idea around the TEDx, I thought that it's about weaving intimacy with memories. And that is what I do on a daily basis. For me, a place or anything for that matter is no longer simply just that absolute living or a non-living entity. I'll give an example probably that tests things a little. A friend of mine recently was in Rishikesh and she took a picture of Kirana shop. There was a glass jar with a red cap on top of it. It was a transparent glass jar with some cookies inside. And she took a picture of that and she sent it to me. Immediately, I was not looking at it as just a couple of biscuits lying in a glass jar. I was looking at it as, oh, this looks so similar to what my grandmom had when I was a kid. And the evolution of that glass jar, because when I was small, things were in glass and then plastic came along eventually in 15, 20 years. So I look at life that way. And then I realized that it's all about, for me, I was able to connect with my own self by weaving. There's a little bit of intimacy from time to time with these memories. Whenever I would look at it, I would not just look at, okay, this is the lamp or this is it. My mind would immediately go to a recollection mode and I would pick out some instance and I would start enjoying that. That was very enriching, and all of that put together with the storytelling context and audio really made it very easy to consume and easy to look back, because my podcast became more like a audio dictionary where I would just look back and, okay, if I've had a fight with my father, I would just look back that story, attempt ke marks. And I would keep reminding myself that my dad is making those attempts, so I should not forget them in entirety. So that's the whole talk about, like how storytelling really enriched and can enrich anyone's life. And then audio being that medium, because it's so close. If in this video somebody walks past behind us, we don't get distracted. But suddenly somebody jumps in by unmuting themselves, we will get irritated immediately. So audio is a very intimate medium. I don't want disturbance. I want it to be very personal. It has to be me. So that way, I put everything together and I said, weaving intimacies with your memory, making audio as a medium will really be an idea to enrich your life in a much, much better way. It could be, in my case, it is writing as well as consuming audio. In other people's case, it could simply be just consuming audio. So that is how I stitch together the idea and then eventually the narrative for the TEDx talk that I gave. I was speaking to a friend sometime back in December, and he quoted this one line from TV series. I don't remember which TV series he mentioned. He said that nostalgia is humankind's second most big problem or pain in life, apart from neck pain. Second in the term, because everybody wants to find a home. Everybody, as humans, as social beings, we want to be there. We want to be in the moment. So my podcast was about, I saw in myself that I was not being in the moment. Wherever it would be, I want to pause and I just want to cherish, okay, this moment, but then something would come and I would just rush away from there. While moving in life is equally important, moving ahead is equally important. I think, जिसे हिंदी में ठहराव कहते हैं, वो लाइफ में ठहराव लाना बहुत जरूरी है. मैं ये नहीं कहूंगा कि लाइफ धीमी कर दी जाए, बट ठहराव और थोड़ा सा एक पॉज आपको थोड़ा सुकून दे सकता है. मतलब ऐसी बात है. अगर आप उसकी अहमियत समझें, if you understand what and how it can really refill your emotional bank, that therav and that pause can really enrich your life.
By the day, you're a management consultant. By evening, you're a storyteller. Do these two overlap anywhere?
थोड़ा सा overlap है definitely है, because my day job is what started exposing me to this skill that I have. Like when I would go and make some presentations, or when I was asked to speak on the stage, is when I realized that I'm not speaking in monotone, or I'm not just looking at PT and pointing out numbers. There was a very natural inclination in me to be comfortable with the audience and make them comfortable with what I'm saying and be expressive. So yeah, so that led to storytelling, and then storytelling back it is feeding it back there, because a couple of days back there was a workshop, and then we were divided into groups and we were asked to come up with some three, 4 pointers. So वो hesitation चली जाती है, लेकिन when I went to the stage and when there were like 6 and 7 of us, so one person from each group had to go and present on the stage. The way I presented was very different from what the way other people went about. And that is something that everybody like later on told me कि यार तुम जिस तरह बोले, जिस तरह किए, वो बड़ा अलग सा था. वो मुझे खैर ऐसा नहीं, मैं जानबूझ के नहीं कर रहा. For me, it is coming out very naturally now. It become like a second nature where I am comfortable with numbers, or I am comfortable putting those numbers into a hilarious tone, or if I see that there is a dip and I know cracking jokes on the meetings and things like that. So just to lighten the mood or just to structure things, I think it has now become a very intertwined thing. But yes, like storytelling as a concept is now very intertwined, and you won't see it anywhere.
Now that you've discovered your love for stories and appreciation that you're getting as a storyteller, would you make the same choices?
I think, like I said early in the session, that there has to be an ecosystem that supports you and puts you there. Like I think the book Atomic Habits says that we are only as strong as our systems. And I truly believe in that. And that system could be one person, could be many people, or could just be some habits which innately you are doing. But given if I have to look back and say, my first preference would not be to make those choices, because they definitely delayed to what I could have been. मतलब बट मुझे दूसरे एंड पे कभी बार लगता है कि अगर मुझे कॉलेज में मौका और माइक मिल जाता तो पता नहीं, मैं शायद ऐसा इतना लिख नहीं पाता. राकेश तिवारी इज अ स्पोकन वर्ड हिंदी पोएट, वेरी पॉपुलर स्पोकन वर्ड हिंदी पोएट, एंड वो कहते हैं कि सबसे अच्छा जवाब ना वक्त के पास होता है, कि वक्त को वक्त देना जरूरी होता है, कि हर चीज का वक्त होता है. मतलब वो जिंदगी चाहती है कि आप वो एक्सपीरियंस करके आए और फिर उन्हें पैकेज करें. So much happened in the 4 years of my engineering. For somebody as a nerd like me, I never attracted a lot of trouble. But so many things happened which led to me creating stories and moments. वो नहीं होता तो शायद यूं नहीं होता. So it's like a tyranny of circumstances eventually. So I can always say that given a choice, probably I don't want to make those same decisions. But then there is a little bit of, किस्मत या कह लो कि लक है कि यार कि वो वैसे ही होना था. जैसे जैसे कहते हैं ना कुछ के रामायण में लोग कहते हैं कि रावण की मृत्यु राम के हाथ ही होनी थी. तो इसलिए वो इतना, मतलब तुम सोचो कि इतना विद्वान आदमी, मतलब जो इतना विद्वान है, इतना समझदार है, वो जाके मतलब दूसरे की वाइफ को किडनैप करके आ गया, राइट? एंड डजंट ही नो द कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज ऑफ इट. बट वो वही है कि भाई कहते हैं कि भाई उसकी मृत्यु जो है वो राम के हाथ लिखी थी, तो इसलिए उसकी बुद्धि जो है भ्रष्ट हो गई. So I think there is a little bit component to life there where it is to be done there, and life prepares you. मतलब जिंदगी आपको तैयार कर रही है उस मौके के लिए जिसको आपने बड़ी शिद्दत से देखा है. ऐसा राकेश तिवारी कहते हैं. तो मैं उसमें बहुत रेजोनेट करता हूँ. पता नहीं, आई डोंट नो कि अगर मुझे मौका मिलेगा तो मैं क्या चॉइस लूंगा. बट सर्टनली जो चॉइसेस लिए हैं और जो आगे ले रहा हूँ, उन पे मैं रिलाई करता हूँ और खुश हूँ आज की. ठीक है, जो हुआ आई थिंक वो शायद ऐसे ही होना था. क्योंकि शायद 25 साल का अभय तैयार भी नहीं था कहानियां बताने के लिए. वो अपनी उलझन में इतना उलझा था, वो क्या ही लाइव या कुछ करता. दैट इज हाउ थिंग्स आर मेंट टू बी. आई मीन देयर आर लॉट ऑफ स्टोरीज एंड आई पर्सनली लाइक बायोपिक्स क्वाइट अ लॉट. लाइक मुझे, जैसे आप देखिए मैकडोनल्ड्स का जो फाउंडर है, या जो अगर आपने मूवी देखी हो, राइट, वो कहानी उस तरह से होनी थी, इसलिए 55 साल की उम्र में उसको वो मिला. वरना वो तो 0 से लेके 55 तक कोई बोल दे कि क्या उसकी जिंदगी थी, तो will you take a better decision? We don't know. I mean, उसको मिला ही वो 55 पे, तो हम क्या बताएं कि 0 से 55 पे क्या पॉसिबल था. Same with KFC, same with so many other people. So I mean, it's very easy to look back and introspect or retrospect में ये कहना वो कहना, but लाइफ वैसे होती ही नहीं ना. लाइफ कहती है कि लाइफ आज में जीते हैं और आगे पे प्लान करते हैं, तो वैसा ही है बस।
Storytellers you appreciate the most?
Oh, a lot of them. जैसे राकेश तिवारी हैं, मैं हाईली रेकमेंड करूंगा, वेरी गुड स्टोरी टेलर। रोशन अब्बास सर की कहानियां जिस तरह से वो नरेट करते हैं, बीइंग कमिंग द बैकग्राउंड फ्रॉम रेडियो, हाईली लाइक दैट। एंड लॉट ऑफ अदर इंडी आर्टिस्ट who are trying to capture pieces of life in very different forms or in the truest form in the way we look at them or we feel them. For example, जैसे मेरे एक मित्र हैं, टीवीएफ में टीवीएफ का शो है गुल्लक करके, तो गुल्लक के वो डायरेक्टर रहे थे। तो द वे व्हेन आई इंटरेक्ट विद हिम एंड व्हेन आई ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड कि व्हाई दैट शो रेजोनेटेड सो मच विद अस इज बिकॉज ऑफ दैट एंटायर टीम्स स्टोरी टेलिंग स्टाइल एंड स्किल। और एज राइटर्स आई थिंक आई ऑलवेज लव हरिशंकर परसाई एज अ राइटर। उनका जो सटायरिकल टेक है ऑन पर्टिकुलरली ऑन गवर्नमेंट एंड शासन के ऊपर जो एक टेक है उनका कहानियों में, वो बहुत बढ़िया लगता है मुझे। मतलब वो ऐसा है कि आप कहीं भी किधर भी कैसे भी लगा सकते हैं। तो और ऐसे सटायर की आई थिंक मतलब डिमांड भी गिरती जा रही है और कंजम्पशन कैपेबिलिटी भी गिर रही है। तो इन टुडेज वर्ल्ड आई थिंक हरिशंकर परसाई, बट एप्लीकेबिलिटी बढ़ रही है। डिमांड कम हो रही है कंज्यूम करने की, बट एप्लीकेबिलिटी बहुत बढ़ रही है उस सटायर की। तो मतलब हिंदी मेरे फेवरेट, वन ऑफ द फेवरेट राइटर्स इज हरिशंकर परसाई।
That's a great place, Abhay, to close this conversation. Thanks for being on the show. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who will find it valuable. For any recommendations and feedback, you can drop me a line at pritish@1%.live. Until next time. You can find the show notes for this episode and every other episode on 1%.live. If you enjoy this conversation, share it on social media and leave a review. See you next time.